All right, welcome back. Hitchhiker's Guide to Cancer. We got our special guest is back, Fumbles McGee, but she doesn't have any vino. She has like a breast milk protein shake. But we're gonna do story time. I need her here to help with the story of how I almost fought my oncologist. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you again.
Oh, she acts so innocent. She was ripping me right before this recording started. But anyways, let's get into the story. So if you watched my last video, I just recently had the results, had my third MRI done, and had the results, which it was a big MRI. It was the first MRI at Hopkins, and it was the one where we needed to determine had my tumor continued to grow, and we were either looking for it to stay the same or get smaller. It stayed the same. Spoiler alert. With that being said, I took my MRI in the morning. A couple hours later, I met with my oncologist, and my oncologist, it was the first meeting where Lindsay and my oncologist had met in person. So Lindsay met up with me, and we met with the oncologist together. All right. So here's how I saw it. Because I'm going to talk to you because we haven't really talked through how it played out in my mind or your mind. So we walk in, and I need to make a note that you've never physically met him, but you have been on the phone with him, and you don't like him. You've made it pretty clear that you're not a big fan.
No, I don't.
And when you were in this meeting, everything about your nonverbal said you were just like pissy, like don't bother me, right? Like, yeah, just arms crossed, smug, stuff like that. So we sit down, we get into the hospital, and Hopkins is really good about kind of getting you in. So we got in, no issues. In walks a fellow before the oncologist. So I had never met with a fellow at Hopkins, so I had just expected my doctor to come in. He comes in, and I'm already a little bit annoyed because I felt like it would have been courtesy to give me a heads up that a fellow was going to come in first. No big deal. Fellow comes in. He was actually really nice. And he basically tells me the doctor's running 10 minutes late. Can I run through some of the details with you? Now I'm even more annoyed because I felt like the fellow could have looked at my notes and got all the details he needed, but he asked me essentially every little detail that's happened since the beginning, January 31st. And the reason why it frustrates me is not because I'm repeating myself, but because my memory is really poor and it's getting worse. And so it's just a reminder of how, about the situation. It's like, I can't recall details. It's frustrating. So I'm struggling with some of the details. You're filling in the blanks. Doctor comes in, and who you're not a big fan of, we didn't mention, not at all. And doctor comes in, and the fellow begins by giving him the rundown. Well, the fellow didn't give him the full correct rundown. And this is what is kind of annoying. It reminded me of like a server. When you go to a restaurant, a server wants to be cool and memorize the whole order instead of just writing it down. I felt he could have just put the notes in and read from the notes, which he did put them in, but he didn't read from them. And he tried to show off in a way and recite it from memory. Again, now I'm getting a little bit more annoyed. Misses a couple things. I add them in, and then we review, tell the doctor, and then we just go in to reviewing the MRI. Now, let me ask you this. When you saw him in person, and maybe he said a couple words, did you feel like you were softening to him, or was your level of hatred still pretty high for the doctor?
Hatred. I never had hatred for him. He was just always quiet and short and just
but
not
did it,
elaborate.
were you like, I know
I was a little softened.
Okay.
He seemed to have kind eyes. So,
okay.
I mean, I couldn't tell with the mask on, but he had kind eyes, and
he wasn't Latin, so you weren't all in. But anyways, I digress. So now we're reviewing the MRI. We bring up the MRI. Let's see what it has. The fellow reviews it again. I wasn't a big fan of that because I felt like the doctor should have first broken down the MRI for the fellow, and then, they could have added whatever. The fellow breaks it down. The doctor doesn't really add much. He uses I felt like a bunch of technical terms that were unnecessary and didn't do a very good job of breaking down in layman's terms. And my whole thing was, did it grow or did it not grow? It stayed the same. Cool. And we really didn't get much else from the doctor, which I was also very surprised about. However, I let it all slide. So I'm still in a decent place, but things are starting to build. Now I'm on to, as this meeting's wrapping up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to accomplish the only other objective I wanted, which was to discuss my chemo. So I am going into my third chemotherapy and I get pills sent to me before each round. Since I've used two different hospitals, it's been a different experience. So the first time around, I got the chemo pills like a month in advance, and the oncologist basically said, hold on to them. I'll tell you when to take them. The second round, I went through Hopkins and I had to call him 2 or 3 times to basically remind him about ordering the chemo pills, because it doesn't get sent to a local pharmacy. It's different in that it gets sent directly to you. So there's a whole nother process. So he was kind of disorganized, and I wasn't really upset about it, but it had caused us to start my second round a week later. I did not want that to happen the third round, which begins next week, but it's a week from that meeting. So it's like, okay, I'm going to figure out, how do we prevent this from happening again? And my question to the doctor was essentially, um, can we create a system? Can I get them early because they got it early before? And as I'm asking him this question, his phone starts ringing outside. So he walks out the door and he answers it in a way where I knew he didn't understand what I'm saying. So as we're waiting, the fellow steps in and I clarify what I'm asking. And he's like, well, I would just order 2 months worth of pills, so you always have a month on hand. Love that idea. Would have been simple, would have been squashed. That's not what happened. The oncologist walks back in. I promise you'll be able to speak. The oncologist walks back in and stop me if I say anything that's not true. Lindsay still has her arms crossed in a huffy puff manner. And I start again and I explained to him what I was trying to get at. Well, what's important to note is that every time I've met with him, he's used it as an opportunity to bring up the fact that he doesn't like that I'm working with more than one institution. He wants me to be with Hopkins. He always says there's too many chefs in the kitchen. I met with him 3 times, and every time he always says that. And so I haven't said anything before, but at this time, it was just not the right time for him to say it. So I'm trying to explain it to him. We're going back. He's answering my question, but I'm realizing he's not understanding what I'm saying. And so I basically was like, you're not listening to me. And I told him, like, listen, I'm trying to prevent what happened before where I had to call you 3 times. So I'm starting to be a little bit more candid with him. And then he pulls out the line. Well, I go, I called you 3 times. I got it late. I don't want that to happen again. And I don't think you understand. And he's like, blames it on me having too many hospitals rather than being accountable. He throws in his packaged line. Well, if there wasn't too many chefs in the kitchen, and I did not like that. How did you see that whole thing going?
It was just like,
What, is it funny?
it was just building. Like I could feel your fire just growing inside of you, next to you. And like, I usually am very verbal during these conversations. And like, I sat back with my arms crossed the whole time. Like, you let him have it. Like it escalated. Like when he was not hearing you and you love to be heard. Like if you
little dig,
if you aren't
use this an
heard,
opportunity to use the dig. Okay.
if you aren't heard, like it's not good. It's not good for the person on the other side.
But my issue was his lack of accountability.
Yes. I
2
agree.
pet peeves.
I agree.
Wasting my time and not being accountable.
Yeah.
He could have just squashed it there and said, it won't happen again. So I'm ending it. And I'm just like, it has nothing to do with these hospitals. I was the only one that was communicating with you regarding my chemo, and that's it. And I was the only one, and we were the only one talking regarding that. So it has nothing to do with any hospitals. And quite frankly, it's only you and Duke. So there are no 4 hospitals. And so I ended, I'm just like, so what can we do differently? Like, do you need me to contact you, or are you going to send them? And I'm telling you, you could hear a pin drop. You were stone-faced. The fellow was stone-faced. It was so uncomfortable. Not for me, but everybody else, it felt really uncomfortable. And out of his mouth, tail between his legs, he's like, I'll order it today. Do you need me to remind? And I did that kind of like almost smug, was like, do you need me to remind you? No, it'll be ordered today. And then we continued on the conversation. Did anything I say, was any of that false?
No.
Did I miss anything?
No, like I think you looked at him though and said, like, because he started to interrupt you.
Yeah,
and
and don't do that.
And then you were like, "Let me speak."
Oh yeah, that's right.
Let me speak.
That's when like the record stopped.
I was like, "Here we go." I was like,
"You're not listening. Let me speak." And that's you love this. Do you know why you love this? Because I know why you love this.
Because I'm a bad listener.
No, that's a true statement, but that's not why you love this.
But
You love this because you weren't the target of that.
no,
Like you got to watch it.
I was like, you know what? Like it's not me anymore. It's your like oncologist now that's getting it. Like it's not me. If your oncologist is getting it, I feel a little bit better now about my situation.
To be clear, do you get it a lot?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. But I knew you loved that because
That's
I'm
why
sure it
I
feels
sat
lonely.
back. I was like, it's nice that it's not me. I can watch it happen.
Because for the record, and we did another video, full disclosure, we can't do it now, but I made her role play because she acted like, "Oh, Christian, your tone." I was like, what did I do? Like, what am I missing? Because I'm a reflection guy and I want to get better. And I think this is more about your agenda, but your point was like your tone. Because I don't yell, but it's always about my tone.
Yeah.
Which I think
it comes off aggressive.
Intense.
Yeah, intense, aggressive. It puts people on a defense and not willing to like really work.
Yes. But I think not willing to what?
Like really like work with you in that moment because it's like,
well, and it gets there because because of something. It's not always the same thing, but a lot of times it's built up frustration. However, I had always been kind of like deferential to him, a little bit chill, lay back. I'd let him lead, and I kind of felt like he was mistaking my kindness for weakness. And that's the point I wanted to make of this video is like, you said this, like, you have to be your own self-advocate. And if something's not right, you need to step up. And that's a big deal. You can't, okay, you've messed up my meds the first round. We can't keep having this happen. I'm not going to die off of you being late on my meds. But at some point, it becomes an issue that I can't count on you for meds, or what am I not going to be able to count on you for? And so that was my big thing. And I do think these people can make mistakes. They're still human. Doctors are human. And I have a tremendous level of respect for doctors. But I also, you have to realize they're human and they could make mistakes, or they could be scatterbrained, or they could be disorganized. They can have all the same flaws that we have. And so sometimes I think there are certain people that won't stand up to their doctors, and there are times you need to. You can't do it every time, but there are times you need to. And that's only one of 2 times in this whole situation since January that I've stood up to my doctors, 2 different doctors, but I've stood up and I felt like it was pretty fair.
I agree.
And I have a longer, like a greater threshold than you, because if that was you, I mean, you would have been bouncing off the walls, just like Sonic the Hedgehog, just wrecking anything in your way. Is that fair?
It's fair. Like, yeah.
Especially because you came in with that little, I can't even say your last name, that little mafia attitude of yours. Like you were going to.
I was ready. I already had a skewed perception of him.
Yeah.
And then that happened. I was like, well, I guess I was right.
Yeah. And it's not even just your tone. You just yell and you're all arms when you get into it. You know what I mean? Like you're just
taking the opportunity to jab.
It's almost like Sonic the Hedgehog, Tasmanian Devil, and like that orangutan in the zoo. That's like when they get that
to a monkey.
no, but like it's like a defense technique that orangutans use to startle the enemy. It's like but the Tasmanian Devil, I think, is more of an apt example. Like you're just like, I never curse, I never yell. I make my point. I'm just a little bit of a tone. So a little bit higher tone.
A little bit of a higher tone. Yeah.
Yours was a little different. So I would just say, comparatively, I probably handle a little more productively.
Well, that probably should be a whole nother episode.
Well, with that said, be your own self-advocate, push back. But he still gets another chance. I'm sticking with him. We'll see how it goes. We'll keep you guys posted, and we will see you in the next video.
See ya.
Bye.